Welcome back to Kris versus Everybody. I'm your host, Kris Canty. This is the podcast where I talk about anything unedited and uncensored, and also unapologetic. No filters, no fluff, just real talk. This episode has been brought to you by the Crisscross Studios YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you never miss a new episode. And if you're listening on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, hit that follow button to stay up to date with every new episode as it drops. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you for your support. It has been over a month since I did an episode because I was in birthday mode, not just my birthday, but my daughter's birthday, and it was exhausting. Birthdays are definitely exhausting. It's actually a time that I like to spend time, at least by myself or with close ones that I want close to me on my birthday. My daughter's birthday, there was too much stuff going on there. Her birthday, the daycare birthday, presents coming from everywhere. I got her a little tent for her birthday. It was nice. But during my month off, I had a quote, not a quote, but like someone online talking about the recent nominees for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And if you're not familiar with the nominees for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the class of 2026, they just released their nominees for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I'm not going to be a pessimist when I say this, but I don't want to be a person who kind of goes back on his word when I talk about this, but there weren't a lot of good rock acts in this nominee class. Now, let me give you an example. Now, of course, we have Phil Collins, which is one of the best artists of all time. Phil Collins is in there. We had Oasis. I don't think they should get in now, but they will get in later. Billy Idol. I mean, I guess he was big in the 80s, but I'm not really a fan of Billy Idol. INXS, this is their first time being nominated. And I do believe that they're getting in because they are kind of paying tribute to a lot of these 80s groups. Jeff Buckley. Don't know why he's even nominated. Didn't really do much. Sadly, he passed away in the 90s, but other than that, I don't see any reason why he should be nominated. Same with Melissa Etheridge. Like, I know you got some bops, but I don't know. I don't know why. And the Black Crowes. I think the Black Crowes should get in, even though they are kind of like newer rock, like from the early 90s, 2000s era. But we also have Mariah Carey, Lauryn Hill, Iron Maiden, Joy Division, New Edition, first-time nominee. Pink, first-time nominee. Sade, Shakira, her first time being nominated. And this one is just criminal. Why is Luther Vandross? Why is this his first time being nominated in 2026? Posthumously. Just put him in already. And then we have the Wu-Tang Clan, which should get in first ballot. Now, I say this because there was someone online, and I have a lot of other peers that say the same thing that kind of reflects what this other person said. I'm not going to name names, but they said that some of these acts, specifically the ones of African-American descent, should not be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because they're not, quote unquote, rock and roll. Now, to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame gatekeepers out there who think that their word should mean something, who cares about what you think? Because if you actually did your research and actually looked at what the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame was all about, you wouldn't be complaining about Where's the rock artists? Why are there hip hop artists in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Why are there soul artists in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Rock and roll did not fall from the sky fully formed. Rock and roll is a fusion of music. It's blues, it's gospel, it's country, it's R&B, it's soul. It's basically electric blues amplified for white teenagers in the 1950s, basically. If you really want to get into it, if you remove R&B, there is no rock and roll. If you remove blues, there is no rock and roll. If you remove gospel, there is no rock and roll. So when someone says the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame should only include rock music, I always ask, which rock? Chuck Berry rock, Beatles rock, grunge rock, metal rock, punk rock, disco-infused rock, funky rock, the hip-hop influenced rock of the 2000s? Because rock has never been just one thing. It's never been just one thing. It really hasn't just been one thing. But for all the people who have been saying, Kris doesn't know what he's talking about, what's this woke person saying? I have something to tell y'all. Let's do a quick history lesson. Since y'all said that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is just white people and rock acts, let's do a quick history lesson, since this show is about facts, and I only talking facts. The first class in 1986, you can look it up right now to clarify, to verify if I'm telling the truth. The first class in 1986, Chuck Berry, black. James Brown, black. Ray Charles, black. Sam Cooke, black. Little Richard, black. Fats Domino, black. That's 6 right there. That's 6 inductees for the first class of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame were black acts. Now, given Chuck Berry, Ray Charles, and Little Richard were pretty much on the rock spectrum, James Brown was a soul singer. Sam Cooke was a soul singer. Fats Domino was more of the jazz act, but still, it wasn't rock and roll. But then you have the Everly Brothers, really good group, Buddy Holly, rest in peace, and Elvis Presley, rest in peace, the king of rock and roll. So of course he had to be in the first class of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So if you think hip hop or R&B doesn't belong, I need you to understand that the hall started with R&B and soul artists in the very first class. It was never called the Guitar Only Hall of Fame. It was about influence. 6 of the 9 artists were black artists. And when you really zoom out, rock and roll is amplified rhythm and blues. It's gospel passion with a backbeat. It's blues guitar turned up louder. So when someone says the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame should only honor rock artists, I always ask, do you mean the rock built on Chuck Berry's riffs? The rock powered by Little Richard's piano? The rock inspired by Ray Charles' fusion of gospel and blues? The rock energy James Brown injected into performance culture? Because if we're being honest, the DNA of rock and roll is black music. And there's the irony that people don't want to sit with, that the very first class of the Rock and Roll Hall quietly acknowledged that truth. Not in 2020, not in 2015, but in 1986, day one, before culture wars, before Twitter debates, before Facebook comment sections. Because some people are confusing classic rock radio format with rock and roll. Classic rock is a business category. Rock and roll is a cultural movement. The Hall recognizes movements. That's why you see rap, disco, R&B, pop artists also being inducted, because these genres didn't just exist next to rock, they reshaped rock and roll. The Hall's original blueprint already reflected the roots. So when people act like hip hop, R&B, and soul artists are outsiders, they're ignoring the fact that the first inductees were the architects of the sound. You cannot tell the story of rock and roll without telling the story of Black American music. You just can't. And this isn't about exclusion, it's about accuracy. It's about understanding that rock and roll was never a sealed off genre. It was a cultural collision, a blending, a borrowing, a remix before remixing was a thing. You can't celebrate Nirvana and ignore the Black music traditions that influenced them. You can't celebrate the Rolling Stones and pretend that their whole blueprint wasn't Chicago blues. You can't celebrate Led Zeppelin and ignore the blues records they were studying. Rock was born from borrowing. The Hall isn't asking, do they sound like AC/DC? It's asking, do they change the direction of popular music? That's why someone like Madonna gets in. That's why NWA gets in. That's why Donna Summer gets in. So the next time someone says keep the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame pure, I can't speak right now. Let me drink some water first. So when someone says keep the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame pure, gently remind them, just sit them down and say, the first class already told you what rock and roll really is. And facts don't care about nostalgia. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame was never designed to be a classic rock radio preservation society. From its very first class, led by architects by Chuck Berry and James Brown, it made clear that rock and roll is a cultural force, not a narrow playlist. So to the gatekeepers, clutching at their guitar picks and drawing imaginary genre lines, history already settled this debate back in 1986. Rock was born from fusion, rebellion, and evolution. And if your definition can't handle that truth, then you're not protecting rock. You're just misunderstanding rock. And that has been another episode of the Kris versus Everybody podcast. See you guys next time for another rant of my choosing. See you next time.